biara wo biara me so da wo no for me wechi wechi so yo ya o se da wo ma me no papa me ni na me yo fi me so wo twa yeah.
This is the African Postman Show. I'm DJRV. Great to have you tuned in. We just heard 2 tracks from Gedu Blay Ambali off his 2017 release from Ogogo Records titled K-Tan. We heard It's Alright. And before that, we heard Gedu Blay Ambali and his band give us Ma Play. Let's carry on and hear some material from a record titled Osandi Owandi. This is classic material from Chief Stephen Osita Osadebe.
was a lot of manipulation, and then for me to feel like I've already been through 2 divorces, I mean, this is what I have to go through. 2010, yeah. Almost 30.
I mean, think of that. I mean, you're living like multiple lifetimes, and by the time you're 30, that's amazing.
Yeah,
Granger. I tell you what, Jimmy G needs some Granger to keep him safe. See, at the end of that last drive, protection is.
Well, can he be the one that gets it done?
I don't know. I tell you what, for all the ones who get it done, like Burrow, like Matthew Stafford, Granger is always there to help. Granger offers supplies and solutions in every industry, 24/7 support, free access to products, presence, and experienced staff at over 250 local branches. Plus, their commitment to being your safety partner can help you keep your facility safe and your people even safer. Call click.com, Granger.com, or just stop on by.
Hey, it's great. The Super Bowl matchup is set. We'll look at it from every possible direction. Plus, the coaching carousel continues to spin. Huge decisions being made as we speak. We'll talk about it at screening. Starting 10 a.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and ESPN Plus.
More garden.
Yes, I'm so sorry about that. I'll be too short. Carrie, it's too far.
physical therapy clinic is pretty stretched. The issue with PT before patients get bent out of shape.
Mistakes is needed.
Indeed can require premium plans.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. This event instantly connects you with quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your sponsored job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
It's time here, everybody. Follow after me and step and back and slide and dip. That's tango.
What size tango? It's probably the heart-shaped honey nut Cheerios. He found out they can help lower cholesterol. Now he's having all sorts of new ways.
Let's see those hips move, people.
Hurry and get your Energy Cheerios. They're only here for a limited time.
And this, I tried it once on the weekend, and yeah, that was easy. You know, it was like 15 or 20 minutes. So I just wound up realizing that I didn't really need to take a car. We wound up I had to take the bus going from Maplewood because my wife and I both had a car for a while, even though I walked to work. But when we had to buy the house, we had to sell her car to get the down payment for the house. And I'm sure a lot of people, you know, a car is like a big chunk of money.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, over the 40 years, this is really the easiest time I can remember for people to go car light. Like when I first started out, you know, the bus schedules were, you know, half an hour between buses. There were only cabs to get around. There was nothing like micro mobility.
Yeah.
Now there, you know, a lot of RTS, some RTS headways are 15 minutes. You know, so you don't have to wait forever to get a bus. There's a car share program in the city now, which we never used to have. There's Uber and Lyft. There's a lot of different ways to get around that I didn't have when I first started out being car light.
I think RTS has worked hard to just provide more options and be on a more consistent schedule.
If it wasn't for the RCST crisis, you know, almost all the routes would be 15 minutes.
Yeah. And Aaron, you went, at one point, you went 9 months without driving?
I did. It was weird getting into a car after that.
What was it after 9 months that you had to drive to, and did you feel like a sellout?
To be honest, I can't remember what it was. I remember I drove the speed limit. I was 30 miles an hour, you know, down the road. It was weird, yeah, taking that amount of time off. But you know, you build such a routine. You know, you build such a familiarity. You know what's weird is when you go that long or longer without driving a car. And forgive me, I may have, in fairness, driven once or twice in that span or something like that. Maybe my wife's car here and there. But you know, it's interesting because it's hard for me now that I just got a new car, to be perfectly honest, to be, you know, and I'm driving more during the winter now, just for various reasons. But it's weird to get back in the mindset of how to get around without a bike, because when you're riding a bike to work, for example, you don't take main roads. You're looking for every parallel, small, off the beaten path road, where you're looking for the nearest trail. I can get halfway to work just riding trail, which is really cool.
But you bought a car recently.
I did. I got a nice I got a promotion at work after a long time, and I've wanted to focus really my time and attention on that. Plus, being realistic, there are some difficult things about about biking, especially in the winter. I would always bike to the winter. In the last couple of winters, I took some pretty nasty falls, and falls that I'm still feeling. I don't need to. By no means am I trying to shy people away from this, but that is part of the reality. Is you hit some ice and there's no tire fat enough on a bike that's going to protect you and keep you upright, and that's the reality of it, and it's something that you kind of take with you. But at this point now, I'm just biking a little less in the winter. I'm driving a little more, and I'm okay with that, but get back to the warmer weather once the snow goes away. I'll be right back to riding my one-wheel biking, do all the fun stuff.
Well, I want to turn to Andre, because what Arian is describing is, I think, both the culture and the design. If a culture is going to change, if we're going to see more people try to bicycle to work, try to bicycle to the store, try to bicycle year-round, then the design has to reflect, and some of it's design, some of it's just policy, I guess. I mean, some of it's literally not just clearing car lanes or the roads for cars, being worried about pedestrian people who are walking on sidewalks. We have unplowed sidewalks sometimes in this city. We have bicyclists who don't feel like the infrastructure is a priority when it snows or when it's cold. And I kind of want to believe that as the culture changes, it will push the policy to change or the design to change. But does one push the other, Andre?
Yeah, I think that you have to lead sometimes with design, because changing the culture is not going to work if it's unsafe, for instance, for people to bike, or if if when they do bike, there's nowhere for them to lock their bike up. A few times I've gone downtown and tried to park my bike and see bike lockers in some of the garages down there, and it's impossible. There's you have to call a number, and there's not at the number, and you have to call a number for a code to get a key, and then there's a whole rigmarole to try to lock your bike up and set up. I'm just going to use what you want, so there are active factors in the design and in the policy that are pushing against the cultural change, and so you really need to move those roadblocks away if you want the cultural change. And I think that there's also pressures the other way. For instance, we were just mentioning gas prices. So there are natural pressures pushing people toward the car-light lifestyle, but we don't move the roadblocks out of the way. And things like design of streets, designing them for many different types of wheeled vehicles, whether it be someone pushing a stroller. Lots of homeless people move their goods around in little carts, have those little pull carts or kind of shopping style push carts, or someone going around a kid going around on a hoverboard. Any of those things, they all need a smooth, plowed, unpotholed, unridged surface to move on. Even someone on a skateboard, and so we need to make sure that those surfaces are spread in a good network throughout the city.
You want to add to that?
Yeah, can I just add?
Yeah.
A really good example of that is my normal commute is taking the Highland Crossing Trail through Brighton and Rochester, picking up the canal path, and then going to part of East Henrietta Road. The alternative in the winter, because neither of those are plowed, are Elmwood Avenue, which is no shoulder, 4 roads, and nobody actually drives anywhere near the speed limit, and in all of East Henrietta Road, which is, again, not a place that's comfortable to bike. To be perfectly honest, that's just not, for most people, the idea of having to bike on Elmwood and East Henrietta is a nightmare. Well, you have that trail access that is just not there 3 months out of the year, and it makes it more difficult. That's a perfect example of something that would make, people
Fuck you.
enjoyable and easy, and then if it's not there, then people aren't going to use it. People aren't going to get on their bike and try something like that. It's awful.
Well, and the notion of the design leads the culture is interesting, because I think some of what RTS was doing was trying to design new schedules that will lead to more of a culture of ridership, more of a culture of trying the bus or some of their other transportation scene. I'll take your calls in a second. I want to read an email from Liz, and I'll direct it to Tracy Austin, who's transportation coordinator for the University of Rochester, who probably has to think about schedules and making sure people have different ways to get around. Here's what Liz says. Liz says, when I moved into my townhouse in Fairport a few years ago, one of the draws was an RTS bus stop within a 5-minute walk. Reimagine RTS has made a bus commute, which I wanted to do, almost impossible. The commuter bus runs once very early in the morning and once in the afternoon. You miss the bus and you're stranded. And the RTS zones don't allow for a personal bus pickup because of the presence of that infrequent commuter route. I've researched many bus routes and options, but RTS has made a pure bus commute without a drive to the parking lot almost impossible. I have been beyond frustrated by this, having been born and raised in New York City, where I took public transport to and from work every day. I hoped to go car light for the environment and for other personal reasons, and I gave this a lot of thought. So thank you for addressing this important topic. That is from Liz in Fairport. And Tracy, I can't speak for RTS. What I can tell you is when Bill Carpenter and the team from RTS have been on this program in recent years, they have acknowledged that some of Reimagine, there's not going to be 100% of the people in our listening audience who are going to be better served by Reimagine. There's going to be sort of winners and losers, so to speak. What they want is to make a lot more sort of winners, a lot more people who have a chance to use public transportation when they didn't before. So I don't know if Bill or the RTS team would say, we are bummed to hear that Liz is having a hard time with this, but that's not a high demand area. We're trying to cater to what people need there, and we're trying to go where the demand is. I don't know. I know that it's hard to meet everybody's needs. And a transportation coordinator, how do you do that in a way that is sort of equitable and sort of effective? Because for people who want to go car light, they do have to make the kind of plans that Liz is making. And sometimes for her, she says it just sort of hasn't worked.
Poor baby.
Yeah, I think that's the general problem for people who can't access some of these services. And I do know that RTS is stuck in a hard spot in some ways, and they are trying to reimagine the reimagine right now because, nobody could have predetermined COVID and how that would impact their ridership. But when they were determining all those routes, when you are working in transportation, you clearly have to go just by the numbers. And if there is a ridership issue in any area and having lower numbers, and then you have a community elsewhere that has a much higher ridership, they're going to definitely design, that the architecture of the transportation world for those people who are going to come in stronger numbers, unfortunately. So, we've had our own issues with some of the Reimagine stuff, and I know they are trying to pull back on certain things now that they're seeing how things are playing out and push for more access in other areas. So, yeah, I don't think there are any easy answers to any of that, but I do know if someone is living right outside of a zone, sometimes mixing mobility is the best next thing. So if she can ride her bike then I don't know how far of a distance that would be, but that might be one way for people to access better options is to take that 15-minute walk or take that 10-minute bike ride and then catch on to whatever the next mode of transportation can get you to where you want to go. Maybe that transportation can only get you within a mile of where you want to be, so then again you might be utilizing other means to get to your destination.
Andy writes and says, Evan, thank you for the show. I would love to see more investment in public transportation infrastructure rather than just improving roads. My daughter lived in Ames, Iowa for 6 years. The bus system was incredibly user-friendly and very expansive with routes. The city assured that buses were never 5 to 10 minutes late, and backup buses and drivers were ready to go if the running buses got overcrowded. I'd love to see Rochester and the USA invest more in expanding public transportation to make it easier for people to use. Also, many people who cannot afford their own car do use Lyft and Uber, which is much more expensive and adds to the number of cars on the road. I do not mean to insult RTS. They are doing the best they can. The city, county, etc. should invest more in public transportation to make it easier to use. And Annie saluting our guests on this program. Thank you, Annie. And she's talking about Tracy Austin, who you just heard, who's with us, a transportation coordinator for the University of Rochester. Andre Primus is an urban planner. Arian Horowitz is creator of the Urban Phoenix blog. And Bill Collins is chair of the advocacy committee for Reconnect Rochester. After we take our only break of the hour, your phone calls next on Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Tuesday are the next Connections. An education for me, maybe for you, on NFT, non-fungible tokens. You might have seen Justin Bieber just spent a lot of money, a lot of crypto, on an NFT drawing of an ape. I don't get it, but I hope people who can explain it. It should be an education about the future Tuesday.
Support from our public radio station comes from our members and from Castoral, supporting RARE, a global organization working to empower people to change their behaviors to protect the planet. More online at rare.org.
As the Omicron variant continues to spread, the CDC and FDA recommend that everyone aged 12 and older receive a booster shot at least 6 months after the second shot. Although no vaccine is 100% effective, the booster will help prevent severe illness, hospitalization, and death, and is the best way to protect yourself and the people around you from contracting COVID-19. There's more information at cdc.gov.
This is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Maxine in Rochester first on the phone. Hi, Maxine. Go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to comment about snow being such an impediment to taking buses or to using schools. We don't have an effective method of snow removal. So between the sidewalk and the street, there's a huge mountain of snow. And I was fairly horrified today to see along Monroe Avenue a man standing out in the street, close to the crew, but standing out in the street by the bus stop to catch the bus because
just saying, sometimes when you're running a large department or a city government, you don't know where all the weak spots are when you get in, and it's going to take some time. But Bill sounds optimistic that there's some openness there, so I hope, Maxine, that starts to change, and I really appreciate the phone call. Let me get Hal in Sparta next. Hi, Hal, go ahead.
Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
Related to the previous conversation, I arrived in the Rochester area in the 90s and was amazed by the efficiency of narrow wheel farm-all tractors set up with huge V plows that were parked by the dozen along East Avenue, and they would go out, clear every sidewalk, and then at intersections they'd make a loop. In other words, they'd make a hard right turn and then go down the street. So that way you had two crossings at every intersection, and they did this phenomenally efficiently, but it seems to have stopped, and maybe they mothballed the fleet. But that was a great solution for Rochester. Now, the reason I called was the way I think of this is life is sort of a circle, and culture starts with children. So what I've always asked young people, including my two kids, is why they would want a car. And so often when you find people, young people working at cashiers, they say, well, I need a car to get to work. And then you ask them, so you work to pay for your car? And isn't that a closed circle? You're not really going very far. So my kids got bicycles, and even though we live in a remote farming area, if they ever needed a car, they were able to borrow an old family car, and even later as teenagers, they went on long trips. But they both went to the University of Buffalo, which, like Rochester universities, generally have bicycle-friendly campuses, and they began to travel as teenagers. We had German cousins visit, and so those cousins asked, when are they coming to Germany? So they biked around rural and urban Germany for summer for 5 weeks on bikes, and they just got out of the culture of I am what I drive, which I first ran into as doing something. So I think to pay for a car is a huge cost of thousands of dollars a year, and if you defer those payments into a good public university education, and then at some point they have professional jobs, as my kids have now, they often can work online. So you want to close the circle and make cars optional, or just as on holidays or something weekend use.
Yeah, as your kids learn. Yeah. Thank you, Hal. And I think, though, let me start with Tracy, but I wonder if our guests have thoughts on if this culture is changing generationally. I think people are driving later in this country. I think people in their teens are less interested in turning 16 and immediately driving. And I don't know what exactly is driving it. Probably a number of factors. But Tracy, do you see that?
No.
No.
Well, I would probably think that in bigger cities, that might be more of a push. I would say for teenagers, I know.
Yeah.
I think, over the course of the past couple of decades, cars have equated freedom, and I don't think that messaging has stopped for younger people. I think actually it's gotten worse in some of our suburban areas, because kids do need to have a little bit more access to transportation to feel that. And then they're being provided with cars younger and younger. I sound like my parents, but
What many people are nowadays. And so I think what that means is two things. In general, it means that people are going to try to find ways to prevent themselves going on trips that could be taken digitally. And when they are able to take many of their trips digitally, that means they're going to be more able to pick their spot. And I think we're starting to see this overall in America. People are sort of moving into smaller, small cities, not suburbs, but like small cities that are dense enough to walk around in, but might not have the amenities you have in a larger city, but they can just Skype in for the, for the job in a larger city. And I think that, kids these days, they don't necessarily have to get in the car to go to the mall and see their friends when they can just, send their friends a Snapchat. But I think that we are going to start seeing it kind of changing. What does it mean to be in a place when so much is digital?
That's a great point. How do you see it with kids these days, Arian?
I would take another route to that. In the years leading up to, let's go pre-pandemic with this, in the years leading up to that, we saw a lot of progress we saw a trend with kids getting their licenses at a later age. Again, a lot of this was it's in larger cities, and a lot of this, like Andre mentioned, is very location based.
Very location based.
Right, but we were kind of starting to turn the needle a little bit. A couple of percentage points here and there. Yeah, you could see that. It's kind of interesting what the reasons are. I've heard the number of reasons, why does this generation seem like at least they're interested in using alternative forms of transportation more often. And I've heard anything from, I've written about this too. More and more kids went to, the kids that went to college at a higher rate than any other generation. You think about a college campus and you think about design and how it's designed. It's designed for beauty. It's designed for ease of getting around without a car. It's dense. It's walkable. Those are all things, you can use a shuttle bus and take public transportation. Those are opportunities for young people, to see what that's like. And now those young people are adults and they want to see that in their cities. There's also the interesting one I've heard is that, kids, who are now my age, we grew up at a time when vehicle miles traveled was just skyrocketing, and it still is. It's still going up. But the interesting thing is, as obviously vehicle miles traveled increased, so did frustrations. People's reported frustrations about being in the car. So at the same time, you have this backseat generation, right? That's what they call kids that were that first generation that started being shuttled everywhere by their parents, baseball games, soccer, things like that, right? And so these kids spent more time in a car at a time when there was more frustration being in a car. So this whole generation grew up in the car a lot, seeing their parents frustrated on the road, seeing the insanity of it. And I've heard that as a reason for kind of why that happened for a while, why we had about 5 to 7 years of transit ridership increase, of more people biking to work and using alternative transportation. And then Uber Uber and Lyft really started being popular, and you saw that, you saw those other numbers start to plummet. So that was a big piece of why I think we've still stayed in the car, the car habit there. And the other piece is obviously the pandemic has just really taken a good sledgehammer to the progress we've made on public transportation, unfortunately. So we got to put the rails back on there, hopefully as soon as we can.
And I think as airfares have gone down, more and more kids have gone to do semesters abroad, whether they've gone to Europe and other cities around the world where alternative transportation is the norm. And they come back to the United States and it's like, I can do that here. But we also have to think about the issue of the opposition, what we think of as the opposition, right? There's two huge industries who are constantly bombarding us with messages that we should buy cars and drive more, right? The auto industry and the oil industry. And the kids are vulnerable to that just as much as anybody else are. It's obviously not like that at WXXI, but probably the largest advertisers for the local newspaper, for the local TV stations, are all car dealers. And same on the national level, right? Some of the biggest advertisers are the auto companies, and that's always been an image, right? They're trying to sell the car as this image of freedom. When you buy a car and you start making the payments and paying the insurance and having to pay for gas and stuff, you realize, and you get stuck in traffic jams on the way to work, you realize it's really not the image of freedom that it was made out to be.
Well, let me try to squeeze in as much as we can before the end of the hour, including Grant in Chilai. Hi, Grant. Go ahead.
Actually, I didn't call in to talk about this, but my kids, I got 5, and they're all around 40, give or take, and they all delayed their driving a lot more than I did. In Baltimore, as a kid, I got my driver's license for my learner's permit at 15 and a half, and was driving at 16 in one day. But my kids, they delayed until 18 or 20, and one of them, and this is why I actually called, commutes from Thurston down to up to Aquinas now on his bike, 12 months, well, not 12 months, but all winter long, and he actually has studded tires on his bicycle, so that's a safety feature that keeps him bright on the ice.
Interesting.
Yeah, just real quick. I mean, that's another piece. You mentioned the difference between getting a license before and getting a license now. There's so many steps, more steps into doing it. There's so many, more. The process is just a little more difficult than it was, 40 years ago, for example. So there's just more pieces there. And they say the more you do that, the more kind of steps that you have to get to drive, the less people are going to really want to go through all those steps.
Yeah, absolutely. Grant, thank you. And
Brothers Osborne, Ain't My Fault.
Chris Stapleton, and I'm talking to Katie Neal. More in just a few.
Stop it! Auto-tune sucks.
Holding you here tonight, watching all the stars align. I wanna stay for forever. Yeah, the sky could be falling, the world could unravel, but you'll still be safe in my arms. Oh, no, ain't nobody gonna steal my love, no, ain't no how, no, never. My heart is
Really driving us apart. I mean,
Every little story. Yeah.
Territories of Donbass, the region of eastern Ukraine, that has never stopped. And so to get there, we traveled 9-10 hours by train and then by car to get to the farthest checkpoint. This is a place called Stanitsia Luhanska. We were trying to speak with people whose lives have already been upended by war with Russia and say, what do you think of this current moment of this crisis? I want to share with you one voice, Lisa. This is a woman named Valerie, 41 years old. She lives in the occupied territories that I can't cross into. We met her on the Ukraine proper side of the crossing. It was freezing. She had just gotten some hot tea to warm up, and she was heading home. Here's what she said.
You're asking now questions that I am able to answer now. On that part, I would think twice. Will I answer your questions, or will I say that I'm sorry, I'm busy and I have to go?
You're waving your tea toward the crossing, and saying once you cross that bridge, you cannot speak so freely.
You cannot speak at all.
You cannot speak at all, Lisa, she told me. This is someone who clearly is anti-Russia, pro-Ukraine. She can't say that when she crosses to the other side of this bridge where I was standing speaking to her. So we heard a lot of voices coming from all different perspectives on the current conflict. We're going to have some of those on All Things Considered later this afternoon.
Including, I'm assuming, the conversation you had with Ukraine's Foreign Minister, Dmytro Kuleba. What did he tell you?
Yeah, I mean, it was a wide-ranging interview. We were pressing him on a lot of things. One thing I was interested in hearing him react to was the question of messaging. Ukraine's government keeps saying the United States and the media is hyping this threat, is fueling panic here in Ukraine. Ukraine's government also says, we need more weapons, we need it fast, this is really urgent. And I said, how can those things both be true? Which is it? Here's what he told me.
We both understand the reality of threat. The difference is that while the United States prefer to speak about it loudly almost every day in public statements and comments, We are quietly focused on preparing the country for any possible scenario.
And he warned Lisa of one of the dangers of fueling panic, as they see it, is that it's hurting the economy. Ukraine's currency has taken a huge hit, and they've got enough going on militarily, diplomatically, without a country in economic crisis, too.
We'll hear more on All Things Considered today from NPR's Mary Louise Kelly. And
Fuck
Mary
Biden.
Louise, thank you.
You're welcome, Lisa.
Well, even before the pandemic started,
dopehead
childcare
kitty
workers
is.
were in a battle against
Crack
germs.
war.
Now, of course, the risks are even greater. They watch after babies, toddlers, and preschoolers, the only people who still don't qualify for vaccines. This time is especially challenging for childcare providers who work out of their own homes. They're facing rising healthcare costs, and it's getting harder to stay in business. Reporter Deepa Fernandez has the story from California.
Little ones at the Wolfpack Childcare in the San Francisco Bay Area fled about gaily in the backyard turned classroom. It's these moments that Ana Andrade loves. It's why she started the childcare in her own home 28 years ago. But nothing has challenged her small business like the pandemic.
With COVID, I was really on the verge of closing everything because having all my kids that cannot be vaccinated, you can imagine the tension and the worries and all of that.
Picture it, snotty-nosed babies, toddlers and preschoolers. They're cute, but also a big, germy nightmare.
I have 2 assistants, and I worry about our health, my health, and of my family, and my assistants and their family.
Andrade considered closing, but
the families I had were in so much need of childcare, and they were like, please, whatever you do, we'll follow whatever you say.
in many communities nationwide, family childcare providers who use their own homes to care for babies and toddlers provide the majority of full-time care for this age group. And they've faced unprecedented health risks during the pandemic. In California, almost half of all childcare providers are immigrants, and half are Latina and Black. They've had to fight to receive PPE and financial aid. With a license to care for 12 children, Andrade doesn't make enough money to cover all her costs.
Every expense in this childcare, it's on me, but I cannot provide health insurance. It's unaffordable.
Andrade managed to buy her own private health insurance policy, which costs $1,300 a month. But it's not a great plan. It comes with other costs.
I'm talking about $2,500 deductible.
And her share...
Yeah, and it's Obamacare, you fucking dickhead.
In 2020, I had a kidney stone, went to the ER, and I had to have it removed. I ended up paying about $7,000.
Those bills set Andrade back a lot. She stopped seeking out care
Thanks,
for
Obama.
minor issues because she couldn't incur more debt.
And then recently, I was taken to the hospital by ambulance, with very, very high blood pressure, which was something new for me. And all I could do while I was sitting in the ER is thinking, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. They're doing all these tests. How much is this going to cost me?
The bills have just begun arriving, and it's already in the thousands. Andrade's situation is not an outlier.
One of the questions we now ask when we do surveys is your deductible over $1,000 a year?
This is Marcy Whitebook, Director Emerita of the Center for the Study of Childcare Employment at UC Berkeley.
If you get a higher deductible,
It's wise, you're everything good, everything true. You're everything new. You're I can see. You will always be everything good, everything true.
part of organized groups before being ghettoized, and these youth movements were almost substitute families. So when Jews were ghettoized, they were with members of their youth movements. They were with their comrades, as they called them, their fellows, their peers. And so there were already strong connections and a sort of pre-existing social organization for the young Jews who I write about in my book. And a big role of the women in the underground was to disguise themselves as being non-Jewish, and at risk to their lives, they slipped in and out of ghettos, and they obtained information. They connected the ghettos to each other. They called each other the radio. They were the communications. That was an early form of the underground work that they did.
They also smuggled weapons.
They smuggled weapons, ammunition. They smuggled dynamite in their undergarments. They smuggled fake IDs, money. Ghettos and brought.
Rochester's New Country 92.5 WBEE.
When KDS Company, it's the biggest names in country music. The Superstar Power Hour.
Chris Stapleton is here all week long to keep us company. And coming up in just a minute, we're going to play your version of Tennessee Whiskey, which I can never listen to without thinking of that performance that you gave at the 2015 CMA Awards with Justin Timberlake, which kind of was like the catalyst that just sent your career to superstardom. At what point after that show do you remember feeling like things were going to be really different?
Well, I think, the performance mixed with we kind of swept all the awards that we were up for that night. Those two things combined.
There's nothing that says we have to move forward with oil and gas. So they simply presumed that the impacts were going to happen no matter what, and then underestimated the impacts that in fact would occur from the emissions that would come onshore and offshore from the development of these leases.
So the Biden administration here, this is worth noting, had promised to stop new drilling, but in this case said that its hands were tied legally, that it had to move forward with these leases after a group of states that wanted the drilling to happen won a previous court ruling. Are you satisfied with the way that President Biden is handling this issue?
I mean, I've been concerned. It does not seem like there's a serious effort to really look at what our energy future should be and how we proceed forward. I know that they were in litigation with states like Louisiana, and that a judge did rule that they should move forward, but I think that there are arguments they could have made that they didn't. So, I would say that I'm not altogether happy with the way things have gone.
Isn't it complicated, though? The head of the National Ocean Industries Association represents offshore drilling and also wind companies, said after this ruling that at a time of uncertainty and rapidly rising energy prices, that U.S. oil and gas production is more important than ever. As you know, your region's economy it depends on oil and gas industry jobs. And if you put an end to drilling in the Gulf, where would you get the energy from?
Well, I mean, I think this is a myth that they've been spreading. There are 12 million leased acres in the Gulf of Mexico. So the fact is that this ruling is not going to stop drilling, A. B, the oil and gas industry has produced less and less economic benefit. They've laid off thousands of workers. And so...
Fucking Biden laid them off, you cunt!
And make a transition to a clean energy future.
Eat shit and die!
That would be acceptable to your group?
Well, I mean, we have not opposed some of the drilling out there. We have 2 million acres under production right at the moment. We have 40,000 miles of pipeline. So it's not like people have stopped them from oil and gas development. The question is, what does the future look like?
What does the future look like to you?
I think the future looks like trying to transition both the coastal economies and the energy industry to a clean energy future, which has good paying jobs and still continues to provide energy. That does not mean there's going to be no oil and gas development in the next 10 years or the next 20 years, but we need to start making a transition. And for us in the Gulf, it's really pretty critical because we are at ground zero for climate change. I mean, we have communities that are already losing their homes. We need to try to figure out how to produce energy in a clean and safe way that does not fuel climate change.
Cynthia Sartu is Executive Director of Healthy Gulf, speaking with us about oil and gas leases in the Gulf of Mexico, put on hold last week by a federal judge. Cynthia, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been a month
Fuck
since
you
a
very much.
fire killed at least one person and destroyed more than 1,000 homes near Boulder, Colorado. The Marshall Fire is considered the most destructive wildfire in Colorado history. The cause still isn't known. When people evacuated, many of them were forced to leave their pets behind. A lot of those pets are still missing, except Jedi. Jedi has been
Makes me giggle a little. This is why you can't sell this stuff, right? I mean, human sacrifice. That's what it is, man. People on the right is unvaccinated people in this country. Good Lord, man. That's the way to win hearts and minds, by the way, for those who are on the
on the fence, too, has decided against whether or not they're going to do it.
Yes.
Let's call
and
them
the
murderers.
countdown continues.
Okay.
First time priest. Never on Casey's countdown.
That's
because
right.
It's lame.
Number 2, it won't be a surprise after number 3, Scott, but
yeah, I know.
New poll showing that trust in the media continues to crash.
Yeah, traditional media index, which includes major legacy media, Washington Post, New York Times, NPR, CBS, fell to 40.2% in terms of trust. That's almost a 7% decline from March. Alternative is not doing much better. Times, Newsmax, Daily Caller, Real Clear Politics, dropping even faster. 12% decrease. We're heading into an election year now. It appears, and this gets back to our Joe Rogan conversation earlier today, that the media have lost control of the political narrative, and they're losing their minds right now.
Yes.
And with that, they continue to build non-trust with idiocy like we just heard.
Well, and it reminds me of the clip that we had from Rogan when he called out Dr. Sanjay Gupta.
Yes.
Said, why does your network lie? They lied.
They lied.
And finally, Gupta had to say, yeah, they shouldn't have done that. And this is Scott Robbins' trifecta, his top 3 stories of the day.
Yeah.
Do it every day at this time. And
there's a third one.
Yes.
And finally, one.
Yeah, well, maybe now the left is going to start caring about the border crisis, because now we've got Russians showing up.
And Ukrainians. They went out. Record numbers of Russians and Ukrainians are now making up the flood that is coming in over the border in Texas.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've heard that from people that want to get back to the United States, even relatives of people. They're told the best thing you can do is come back through the southern border.
The migrants now on the border included more than 2,000 Russians and 300 Ukrainians. Most arrived at the ports of entry, one in San Diego, the other in Texas. And now they're like, well, I guess this isn't a triangle problem anymore. Now, the question I have, and apparently they don't know this, and this is the thing, I think this is what we should do. Seriously. We should go to these countries where the flood of migrants are coming over and explain to them that they shouldn't come here. Because we're racist, we're homophobic, we're xenophobic, and we've got a huge problem with green planet stuff, right?
You don't want to come here.
You don't want to come here, because if you come here, you will die.
That's right. Well, and not only that, you're going to get whipped.
Yes.
By some border agent on a horse on your way in here.
Yes.
You don't want that either.
Why would you want any part of this nonsense?
Yeah, I know. You just heard Jim Acosta. You got Republicans, whether it's by being against the vaccine mandate or being pro-Second Amendment. I mean, Republicans everywhere obviously support human sacrifice, according to Jim Acosta. Why would you sacrifice your cozy life in Russia?
And you are not going to be able to get out of a car without being shot by a policeman. This is what happens in this guy. You don't want to stay where you are.
Yeah, that's true. Yes.
This is a horrible place to be. You don't want to be here. Okay. Maybe we should have Democrats at the border tell them how bad it is. Maybe convince them to turn around and go back.
Yes.
Well, we've tried everything else.
Yeah. And there you have it.
Okay. The trifecta, Scott Robbins.
Yeah.
Every day at this time.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
We still have Nimrod's news to get to, and also a news update with Mr. Van Camp.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Yeah.
It's really been an honor for me.
See ya. Bye.
You somehow say goodbye to him every day or something?
Goodbye. Thank you.
Got it.
Elise and Carl needed a small business loan fast to order more equipment for their bakery. Elise suggested OnDeck.com, but instead, Carl called
Lone Falcon!
Wait, no. Look out! Fast Falcon, huge! Lone Falcon, wide!
There's a better way to get a fast small business loan. OnDeck, the online lender that makes it easy to apply in minutes and, if approved, get your loan as soon as the same day. With lines of credit up to $100,000 and term loans up to $250,000, OnDeck lets you choose the loan that's right for your business. As America's largest online small business lender, OnDeck has funded over $14 billion to businesses like yours, so you can borrow with confidence and get your loan fast. Go to OnDeck.com. Your loan is on deck. Depending on certain loan attributes, your business loan may be issued by OnDeck or Celtic Bank, a Utah Chartered Industrial Bank member FDIC. Limited eligibility for same-day funding. OnDeck does not lend in every state. All loans subject to lender approval.
table at a diner. Why leave thousands on the table with your tax return? Jackson Hewitt will help make sure you don't. This year, there's thousands of dollars worth of new tax credits. Your Jackson Hewitt Tax Pro will help you track down every last one, so you get your biggest refund guaranteed. Don't leave thousands on the table this year. Discover thousands of dollars in tax credits instead. Learn more at jacksonhewitt.com.
Asthma symptoms can attack anywhere, like on a city street. Now, you can get fast relief anywhere with new improved Primatene Mist, the only FDA-approved asthma inhaler available over the counter. So whether you need relief of symptoms at the park or at your kitchen table, Primatene Mist starts working quickly, opening up your airways to restore free breathing. For temporary relief of mild symptoms of intermittent asthma, use Primatene Mist and breathe easy again. Available at CVS, Rite Aid, and Walgreens. Use as directed.
Peekaboo. Peekaboo. Smile.
Smile, buddy.
Come on. Smile. Oh, honey, he's still not smiling.
Maybe he's not a smiler.
Yeah, maybe he's just not a happy baby.
Maybe he's just being a boy. You know how boys are.
Or maybe he's teething. Oh, poor baby. I think his gums hurt.
Maybe he's just tired.
Or maybe his tummy hurts. He didn't eat that much.
Maybe he's not ticklish.
You think maybe he's scared of the dog?
Maybe he'll outgrow it. Maybe it's a phase. Maybe he just doesn't like smiling.
Maybe he has autism, and we can definitely do something to help.
Maybe is all you need to find out more about autism. No big, joyful smiles by 6 months is one early sign. Learn the others at autismspeaks.org/signs or see a doctor today for an autism screening. The sooner it's diagnosed, the better. And it can make a lifetime of difference. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
A dental sealant is a thin coating that's painted on teeth. It's a quick, easy, and painless way to help prevent cavities in children. Sealants prevent the most cavities when applied soon after permanent molars come in. That's about age 6 for first molars and age 12 for second molars. Sealants can protect against cavities for up to 9 years. They can be applied in dental offices or using portable dental equipment in community settings like schools. Although the number of children in the U.S. with sealants has increased over time, low-income children are 20% less likely to have sealants and twice as likely to have untreated cavities than higher-income children. Untreated cavities can cause pain, infection, and problems eating, speaking, and learning. Applying sealants in schools for low-income children could save millions in dental treatment costs. To learn more, visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
The Markley Van Camp and Robbins Show. Thank you for being here. Jamie Markley, David Van Camp, Scott Robbins. News update, David Van Camp.
Well, the Freedom Convoy continues in Canada, and they are going to be shutting down a port of entry in Alberta between the United States and Canada.
Small French, you say?
They're going to wind up doing that. Meanwhile, on the other side of the country, they got their comrades in Ottawa trying to, well, fight back against the never-ending lockdown cycles, the vaccine mandates, the mask mandates, all of it that's going on. By the way, on the note of vaccinations, they're changing the verbiage again. I wonder how long it'll take before this winds up in the White House.
Okay.
But I was reading in the Financial Times about the current wave that the world has been dealing with. And apparently they are shifting away from calling it a pandemic of the unvaccinated, and now it's a pandemic of the unboosted. Oh, God. Oh, man.
Yeah, right.
Except, Scott Robbins, you have intimate experience with how big of a lie that is.
Double vax boosted COVID. In that order. Give me that crap. That's unboosted. I'm boosted. That, by the way, was like, there's no guarantee. I mean, after all. I mean, this is tricky, this Omicron.
No.
And that's the one I got. Apparently it avoids vaccine. I don't know. Now there's like a specific vaccine being made for Omicron.
Yeah. Yes.
That's like built the barn door after the horses are gone.
But now we have stealth Omicron.
Everybody panic.
So then when are they just going to call it the COVID shot? Like a flu shot.
Right.
Because that's what it is. It's not a vaccine.
Except the flu shot you get once a year.
Right.
Not once every 4 months or whatever.
Yeah. All right. Ready for Dimrods? Let's do this.
When the going gets tough,
Damn it, this is too hard.
the dumb get dumber.
All right, Ian.
It's Nimrods in the News on the Martley, Van Camp, and Robbins Show.
I love the poorly educated.
All right. Nimrod's in the news. Man, this is crazy. 27-year-old guy from Jersey, Richard Charkowski, hanging out with a buddy near Scranton, where Joe grew up. Decided to cook some potatoes in a frying pan. It was around midnight. Not clear if they'd been drinking, but you could guess.
Odds are.
He offered to share and asked his friend, hey, you want to eat potatoes? That's nice, right? Friend said, nah. And Richard said, what do you mean you don't want potatoes? No thanks, man. And he just didn't take the rejection well, so he flipped out, threw hot oil in the guy's face, and started beating him over the head with a frying pan. Hit him so hard the handle of the pan broke off. Oh, damn. Sounds like the guy's going to be okay, though. Nuts. But he ate his potato after that. No, he doesn't want it. And a guy in Germany ended up in the hospital after he played a virtual reality video game too much, broke his neck. Oh, he's going to be okay, but he's a gamer.